I see no changes.
The schools have failed us. This is the cry of protest. It echoes from the students in the most overcrowded classrooms to the offices of the most overworked first-year teachers. From the high school dropout who never had the resources to succeed, to the valedictorian who takes ADD pills in order to stay up all night cramming for a calculus exam. But it would be naive to simply blame the schools for the troubles of our students, when we as a society have put our priorities and our resources elsewhere. Although all students, in some form, are being done a disservice in the education system, it is the African American and Latino students who are failing at the most alarming rate. But is the failure really with the students? How can you blame African American and Latino students for failing to succeed in an institution which was never really created for their success? Although the segregation policies of the late 19th and early 20th centuries in the United States are not the root of the problem, the era does offer us a valuable reference point for finding out why Latino and African American students today are not receiving an equal education. Separate but equal meant that white students had to be separated from African American and Latino students. African Americans were segregated based on the color of their skin. Latino students were segregated based on their language.
Before Brown versus Board of Education, schools in the United States were considered separate but equal, and that was the law. On buses, at department stores, at gas stations, at restaurants, everything. So the schools were basically a reflection of what was going on in America in the early 1900s. Oh, it's okay for you to have an education. It's just not okay for you to be educated with us. You can have a separate education and it'll be equal, but separate wasn't equal. The buildings in and of themselves where students were actually going to school were dilapidated, just completely rotting. Rain would come in through buildings. The books that students were given were hand-me-downs from the white schools, and oftentimes pages were torn out. Oftentimes a lot of obscenities were written in the books, knowing that the students would be getting these books to study with. And so it was just kind of, reflective of again, what was going on in society. Second-class citizens. You're going to get this rundown building, no indoor plumbing, you're going to have to go to the outhouse. You're going to have to walk several miles to school, past perhaps the white school, on your way to your rundown school. And it was all very demeaning. It really sent a message.
In 1945, a group of Mexican families in Southern California sued the Orange County School District, claiming that there was no reason why their children should have to go to separate schools. In the case of Mendez versus Westminster, the court found that it was illegal to segregate Mexican students based on language and ordered the integration of schools in Orange County. Segregation, however, would continue until 1954 with the Brown versus Board of Education Supreme Court decision.
when you look at Brown versus Board of Education, Brown basically represented a combination of 5 different lawsuits that were going on throughout the East and the South to desegregate schools, but there was one particular, one of those 5 lawsuits was a student-led movement in Prince Edward County, Virginia, where the high school students just had enough and they really wanted to change the circumstances for themselves and figured if they didn't do it for them, then their kids were going to be going to those same schools and their grandchildren were going to be going to the same schools. The court ruled that separate schools were in fact not equal and that schools were ordered to be desegregated. The African American students, of course, were elated. It was a huge moment in our country's history. It was met with some resistance. A lot of proponents of segregation tried to figure out ways that they did not have to desegregate their schools, and ironically the same school district where the students had led the movement to desegregate, that school district decided that they would not desegregate their schools by closing their schools down. And so the public schools actually shut their doors for several years and started these private academies that the white students actually went to and just basically shut out the African American students.
So integration happened and then it didn't happen. And I don't think it ever really has happened to the degree that that people maybe wanted it to happen.
And there's still ramifications that we're finding today in schools as far as what we're finding in urban communities where students of color are being educated.